Welcome to our channel, where we talk all things true crime. This video is for educational purposes only, but stay around until the end to hear our opinions. Let's get started.
Elizabeth Bathory, also known as the Blood Countess, was a Hungarian noblewoman from the 16th century. She is infamous for her alleged sadistic and murderous activities.
Elizabeth Bathory was born into the powerful Bathory family in Hungary in 1560. Her family was one of the most influential noble families in the Kingdom of Hungary.
According to the National Geographic, already by the age of 4 or 5, Elizabeth suffered from epileptic seizures, violent mood swings, as well as painful migraines. Bathory was also exposed to brutality. Servants were routinely beaten in this era, and at the age of 6, she had witnessed a public execution. At the time, symptoms related to epilepsy were treated by rubbing blood of a non-sufferer on the lips of an epileptic or giving the epileptic a mix of non-sufferer's blood. However, it's unclear if this treatment was used on Elizabeth or not.
In 1573, Bathory became engaged to Count Ferenc at the age of 13 through a political arrangement of their parents. They would wed on May 8, 1575. Their marriage resulted in combining their land in both Transylvania and Hungary, now known as Slovakia. They would have their first child in 1585, a little girl by the name of Anna. They would go on to have up to 5 more children, although one cannot be confirmed as the child was not named in Bathory's will.
Fast forward to 1602, and rumors about Bathory's alleged misdeeds would begin to spread through the kingdom. Rumors of torturing and killing young girls. These rumors would ramp up after her husband's death in 1604. The exact number of her alleged victims varies in historical accounts, with claims ranging from several dozens to several hundreds. The Guinness Book of World Records would name her the most prolific female murderer, listing her victims at 600.
Bathory would have been 42 at the time the accusations started. The infamous legend surrounding Bathory suggests that she only killed young females so she could consume and bathe in their virgin blood to maintain her youth and beauty.
The alleged methods of torture and murder described in various accounts are gruesome and sadistic, including severe beatings, burning, cutting, and freezing. Some sources claim that she even used needles or scissors to mutilate her victims. These girls would have been servant girls or even young girls that were sent to her to learn courtly etiquette. The victims were often from the surrounding villages. This was rumored to go on for years.
Finally, an investigation was started and 2 notaries were ordered to collect witness statements. Up to 300 statements were collected. Bathory would be arrested along with servants that were accused of being accomplices. Although there are reports of multiple dates, it appears the arrest would have been between 1609 and 1611. Elizabeth Bathory enjoyed a degree of protection due to her noble status. After her arrest, her properties and wealth were largely retained by her family. Bathory was held under house arrest, and her family's influence played a role in avoiding more severe consequences. Her servants were not as lucky, as 3 of them were reportedly put to death for their help in carrying out these alleged heinous acts. Many records of her trial were sealed, making it challenging to establish the full truth of her actions. Bathory spent the rest of her life confined to her castle until her death in 1614 at the age of 54.
Bathory's guilt and the true extent of her crimes are still subject to historical debate, due to her records being sealed and how long ago her alleged crimes took place. These claims are largely unsubstantiated and sensationalized. Some argue that she was the victim of a political conspiracy or religious tension, while others believe she was a serial killer.
It's important to emphasize that the accounts of Elizabeth Bathory's crimes come from historical records and testimonies that lack concrete evidence due to her records being sealed. This only leaves us to speculate. The truth may never be fully known.
Nevertheless, her story has become a popular and enduring legend in folklore and horror culture. Bathory remains a subject of fascination in the modern era. Her life and the legend surrounding her continues to be explored in various forms of media and has contributed to the enduring stereotype of the female vampire and the notion of a bloodthirsty aristocrat. We have associated vampires with Transylvania since the early 18th century. Her story has become a symbol of the dark side of nobility and beauty.
So what do we think?
I think it's both true and untrue. I can see someone doing that.
Yeah, like they were saying, like some of them, you know, it was just a few dozen, and then the Guinness Book of World Records had her at like 600, but some other things that I read said that she was convicted for 80. Like,
Yeah.
she had 80 victims. So it's like, that's a really big difference between 80. Well, 80 is a ton of victims, period. But you know what I mean? For them to say 600. I hadn't ever heard of her until recently. And the more that I researched it, it almost kind of felt more like a witch hunt, in my opinion. I'm not saying she didn't do anything. And, you know, I know back in that era, it was common to beat servants and, you know, not acceptable. But you know, back then they did. And so, you know, I don't know what type of punishments she inflicted on them.
Yeah, that would be acceptable.
Yeah, I mean, none of it would be acceptable these days. But also, if her epilepsy was treated with blood, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's very confusing. I'd never heard that before. I
No.
like researched it to try to confirm it. And it seems like that was something that they did back then. Obviously we know more now and that's not something we do, but I thought it was interesting that they didn't start investigating her until her husband died. And then it almost felt like, because she started giving away all of her property to her family.
Yeah.
So that it wouldn't be confiscated once the trial was complete. Almost like it was a land grab, almost, is what it kind of felt like. I don't know.
She already knew she was going to be found guilty.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I think. I'm kind of with you. Like, there probably is some truth to it, but I don't know if I believe it's as gory and murderous, I guess, you know.
Yeah, as they make it out to be. I mean,
Yeah.
because you have to think, it happened so long ago, and with the record still, people, when you tell stuff, they exaggerate it a little bit, and so over this long of a period of time, like, it's gonna be nuts.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I had read, not only like trying to read what reputable sources are out there on it, but like reading in the comments of what other people are saying, is that, and I had noticed this too, that it really hadn't been reported on until almost like the 18th century.
Yeah.
So it's like, this happened in the 16th century, but then it really wasn't reported on until like 200 years later. And then, so like, what kind of exaggeration happened between when it actually happened to them, I guess.
And you have to think, if any other girls, will just say younger girls went missing or died mysteriously, she was probably blamed for it.
Yes, this is true. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine them like letting that many girls go missing without.
I mean, I get, like, back then where you didn't have communication, obviously, very well with the surrounding towns, but since that was a kingdom, didn't people go there?
And I think it's like the rumors were spreading throughout their own kingdom. So supposedly, like, around 1602s when the rumors kind of started, and then they ramped up after her husband died in 1604, but it looks like they didn't even investigate it till like 1609, 1610, you know what I mean? Like, there was, like, why would you not even investigate for that many years and allow it to keep going on? And one thing that I found interesting was that there really was no first-hand accounts. I mean, obviously the records are sealed, but it seemed like it was like people repeating what someone else had told them. Like, so there was no concrete evidence. And they get the number 600. I think a servant girl had said, well, I don't know if it was a girl, but a servant had seen one of her books, and supposedly it had like all her victims in it, and there were 650 of them. And so that was something they used against her to arrest her and take her to trial. But when that person testified, they didn't mention the book and they didn't produce the book.
Yeah. I mean, they're probably just trying to save their own neck by giving information.
Yeah, and so then it kind of feels like maybe it was a conspiracy against her. You know what I mean? It seemed like they didn't really have, again, concrete evidence.
Seems like she wasn't well liked.
This is true. And so, obviously, our justice system's a little different now than what it was back then, you know?
Yeah.
But I just don't know how much investigating was
actually
done. But it's definitely an interesting story, and, like, there's been, I mean, people are still using her as, like, a muse.
Inspiration.
For projects. Whether it be movies or paintings or, you know, music.
What are your thoughts? Do you think Elizabeth Bathory was a bloodthirsty killer or a victim of a witch hunt? Leave your comments below.
If you liked this video, please consider subscribing and turn on notifications for future videos. Until next time, stay safe.